Assalamualaikum semua. Perkenalkan, nama saya Sirhan SAMIR. Pada kesempatan kali ini saya akan menyimak materi yang diberikan untuk mata kuliah dasar pemrograman mobile. Ini yaitu React Native Deployment dengan mengarahkan ke video YouTube ini. Langsung saja kita menyimaknya.
Building React Native applications with Expo is incredibly easy, but at the same time also kinda confusing. Let's talk about all the ways how you can build your React Native application with Expo, including local builds, EAS, Android Studio, Xcode, and everything that you can do. Hey everyone, what's up? Simon back here with another tutorial on clarifying what you can do with Expo in your React Native application in terms of building your app. So here we go. I have a completely blank new application and we're gonna straight dive into this because the first thing is so easy. You're just gonna run npx expo and then you can follow this up with start, or you can just do npx expo. This is the easiest way of building your React Native application with Expo. It will give you a QR code that you can scan with your Android device, with your iOS device, or you can simply press A, I, or W to open Android, iOS simulator, or web. So I will just go with I, which will bring up the iOS simulator. I'm gonna place it somewhere here. At the same time, I will show you this. This is my device, and we see right here, I do have an Expo build running on my computer, so now on my actual device I can also launch the Expo Go application and I will get the preview of my application. So this is really the easiest, the fastest way to build your React Native application with Expo. However, there are considerably downsides to this. Just want to show you quickly to clarify this. We do have live reload in here if we're using this application. And the cool thing about Expo Go is that we can now also, for example, press Control-Command-Z. There's a different shortcut for Android, which opens up this nice view. We're gonna come back to that later, but just keep in mind, this is not the default debugging view of React Native. So, how does all of this work? I just wanted to really quickly dive into and show you how fast it works. This is an application that comes bundled with a lot of SDKs from Expo. That means if we're using the camera, some kind of contact plugins, file system, whatever it might be, it is usually already bundled with this application. You can just use it right out of the box. However, what if you want to use something like React Native Vision Camera or some other package with native modules that is not included in this app? Well, then you have to turn to something else, and that is what we're going to talk about in the second step. So it's really important to understand that Expo Go is a great way to quickly spin up your application. It is okay for using it while testing. You can use it like the complete time if you're only using the Expo SDKs and modules here. Then it's completely cool. However, there's also another downside right now. Since Expo SDK 50 or 51, there's only one version of Expo SDK bundled with the Expo Go app. So in the past, there were multiple SDKs included. That's not the case anymore. So you might get into problems here and there as well. And that means Expo Go is nice for quickly looking at your application, for starting out. You don't need Android Studio, Xcode. You see, nothing is here in my folders, and it's really an easy way to look and share your application quickly. But usually you want to take things a step further, and that is where pre-build comes into play. So Expo pre-build basically means it will take the information you've specified in your app.json. There might be a block about plugins. It might include some native settings, some config plugins, and then you generate an actual native project. This usually works like this. So let's stop this here, and we do npx expo pre-build. We don't have to follow this up with anything. This usually now asks us, okay, what would you like to name your package? This is the bundle ID. We'll just stick to the default here. Same for iOS, and then it will create native folders for Android and iOS based on our application. Now, here things get a bit more complicated because you can now launch them through Android Studio, Xcode. You can continue to use the Expo CLI. There's the term continuous native generation. So there's a lot already going on after you leave the comfort of the Expo Go application, but bear with me, we're gonna walk through this. So now that you have these Android and iOS folders, the easiest way to run your application is going ahead with npx expo run, and then follow this up with either Android or iOS. So I will just do npx expo run iOS. I will also now close this so we see what's going on. We don't need this right now.
Look, I know why you're here. You're currently working on your e-commerce or dropshipping store.
Sick of slow dropshipping.
By the way, if you run no npx pre-build and just run npx expo run iOS, it will actually also on the first run do a pre-build of your project. So it's kind of the same. And this might take a while because now we are actually building our own native application that will be built to our device. So let's wait until this is finished. Alright, so the build finished and we kind of see the same output. It looks like we're still using the Expo Go application or what's going on, but notice the difference. We are now using a development build. So this is an important term. And there you can actually still switch to the Expo Go app by pressing S. So now we have a build and the simulator here asks if I want to open this. So I click open. And we get kind of the same experience that we had before. Once again, we should have live reload, so I can change something and it quickly changes in here as well. What has changed? Now, this is our own application. You see, I launched this and I did not launch the Expo Go application. That means on my device, I also now lost the connection. If I wanted to also deploy this to a device, I would have to follow up the commands. So I don't want to mess up the command. Let's do a new terminal, npx run iOS -- device. Then I could build straight to my connected device. And by the way, this should now also work over the network. So you don't even have to connect your device to your computer. One caveat also that I want to quickly mention is I'm running this here on a Mac. And you need a Mac to do a pre-build for iOS and to run this project on iOS, the simulator, like this. If you're on a Windows machine, you can only do this for Android and you have to use EAS, which we will talk about in the end. So now we have our development build. As I said, everything's pretty much the same, but look at this. If I now press Command-Control-Z, I get the default React Native debugging menu because this is sort of a default application. It is a bit similar to what Expo Eject did in the past. You know, Expo Eject doesn't exist anymore and pre-build is the thing that gives you the most flexibility. So at this point, I can install any kind of native module in my React Native application with Expo and use it here in my pre-build. If I want to get back this cool debugging menu, so this is also described here as the developer menu, which you can, by the way, customize. If I want to get back this thing, I have to run a new command. So let's kill this and let's run npx expo install the expo dev client. If you install this package, your final application resembles more closely what you have seen previously in the Expo Go application. The only downside to this approach is that in general, if you install a new package, you have to do a new npx expo run iOS. Also, one more thing to be aware of is if you add a new module that changes something in your app JSON, like under plugins, there's a new module, a new config plugin added that changes your native project. What you have to do is usually run again npx expo pre-build -- clean. Okay, so you don't need true or false at the end. You just need npx expo pre-build clean. This will basically wipe out your iOS and Android folders in your project and do a new clean pre-build based on everything, all the information in your app JSON. In the meantime, here's the project coming up and you see this is now using the developer menu. It gives you access to useful tools in your development builds. You can open it anytime with whatever. So let's continue and we see if I now press Control-Command-Z here, I get the dev client menu that I'm used to from the Expo Go application. So This is pretty much everything that you have to understand about Expo pre-builds. I think if you understand what Expo Go is, that is this bundled app experience with pre-configured SDK versions and plugins that you can use to quickly spin up something, and then you can then opt out to do a pre-build and run npx expo run iOS or Android on the simulator or on a connected device, then you know like 80-85% about how you can build your React Native project with Expo, because usually this is now enough to
buat website praktis dengan AI Website Builder Hostinger. Tulis konsep website, lalu tunggu AI
debug and develop your application, because the pre-build, as I said, gives you 100% flexibility. You can install any native module, you can use config plugins and continuous native generation. As you can see here, we're still running live. This is like a live test, a live reload and hot reload of our application with Expo Run and not the Expo Go application. However, let's take things a step further now. You might be coming from Android Studio or Xcode as a native developer, and you're asking yourself, but maybe I just want to run it through these tools. How could I do that? Good question. I'm here to show you exactly this. So as I said, we do have an Android and iOS folder after doing our pre-build. So the pre-build is kind of like the prerequisite to do what we do now. What I want to do is I would actually like to open this. I previously could really open this this folder right here. Let's reveal it in the Finder. And then I will open the XC workspace. So this is a traditional Xcode project. Now, let's see what can we do. We can deploy this to the iPhone 15 Pro. And I can do a run up here. And of course, at the same time, we could launch Android Studio. And within Android Studio, we could do something similar. Actually, I will open Android Studio because it takes like ages to open the stuff. So let's bring in the Android folder here and click open in Android Studio. Yes, I trust that project. And then let's put this to the background because this takes some time to initialize. In the meantime, Xcode is building my application. And I intentionally want to show you something that usually goes wrong at this point. So when you build your application through Xcode for whatever reason, maybe you just, I don't know, like it, you like Xcode, you like the debugging tools of Xcode, I don't know, for whatever reason you're doing this. So if you do it from here, we see app is launching, but soon we should discover a problem because we already see it's trying to connect to Metro to develop JavaScript, but it's not really working. The problem here is that we still now need to start our local development server, because if I check this out, you see nothing is running. So I do have to run npx expo start again. --dev client. I don't know if I need that. I will just do npx expo for the moment. If I do this and I fetch this, we see now I can select my build again. I can connect and my app is working straight through Xcode. Okay, what did we just do? Well, we just built the application, the React Native application through Xcode, but this app is still pointing to our local Metro server, which means it's pulling out the stuff here, and we have live reload and hot reload and refresh and whatnot. But what if I kill this? What if I want to install this application on a device of a friend? I can't, because I deploy it and then I see this. It's not really what I want. So if you want, I think they called it previously a standalone application that I can just like build on the iPhone of my wife, then I would have to go into Xcode, and now it gets a bit more challenging. So you have to now edit your scheme. You have to edit the scheme, and you have to go check here the build configuration. Right now it's set to debug. I will now set this to release, and I will close this. And then I will run this again to my simulator. Okay, so this is now building again. Hopefully it's not failing. And we're just gonna wait for a moment. And then we're gonna see what happens here to our iOS build. All right, so this build took really long, like about 5 minutes. I'm on a pretty fast MacBook, but this was really still super slow. But notice what we do have now. We do have this project. If I change something in here, ooh, we're not connected to my server anymore. Well, because we do have a release build of our application, which also means I can kill this, I can open it, and it opens like the regular final application. So that means if you change the release configuration here, in this case, the scheme to release, you actually get what you would finally submit to the iOS App Store. At this point, I could also now go ahead and run a product archive and do an archive build of this and upload the IPA. I do get a problem because, yeah, I haven't selected my signing, so we have to go here and select signing identity, then I would sign, and then I could finally do, what is the shortcut for an archive? Wasn't there like a shortcut? Did they remove that? Anyway. So this is the release build that I could build to some application that is not using a local development server, but has really bundled everything inside. I don't want to do this again. Not again, please don't do this again. Okay, so the thing about this is that if I now do changes here, if I like change the minimum deployment target or the display name, and if I later refresh the project with pre-build, these settings would be removed. So be careful about applying changes right here in Xcode. The recommended approach is usually that you put out a config plugin and include it in your app.json. So if you're using continuous native generation, CNG, that stuff is automatically applied to your Xcode or Android projects when you do a pre-build, and then you have everything of the configuration again. So if you have something like minimum deployment target or things, you include that in your app.json. Okay, that's everything for the moment about Xcode. This should give you all the information you need to make a pre-build, deploy it to your simulator or device, and even do a release build. And if you want to submit your app straight through Xcode, the classic way of building an iOS application and then handling the rest in App Store Connect. Now, let's talk about Android. At this point, hopefully my application is finished here. I also brought up my emulator device, so I do have a virtual device. You can find some guides on the internet on how to create your virtual device if you don't have one. And then I will simply hit play here, or whatever that button means, which will build my Android React Native Expo application to my emulator or whatever device that I select up here. However, we're gonna run into the same trouble that we had with iOS, which means this, in the default case, is using a development instance, which means we have to do npx expo to spin up my local server, to spin up Metro. Yeah, I should probably clean this. I don't know why I sometimes get this. It's not really causing any problems, but it looks so ugly that I just want to get rid of it. So let's do npx expo again. This will start this. It is using, once again, a development build. And meanwhile, we see my app here on the emulator. Let's close this one behind this, and I'll select my server. We see it's loading here, and I do get my live development environment. Okay, so here we go, Android, quick change, and it of course instantly changes in my emulator, or if I would deploy this to a connected device. Good. I don't want to go through the whole process again because it might take time, but I just want to show you that if you want to do the same thing that we just did within Xcode with Android Studio, for whatever reason, because Android Studio comes in my hierarchy even way below than Xcode, you could go on the side. So let's see if we can see this. Down here, I think I can't zoom into Android Studio. So down here, there's something called build variants. You can click that one. And you're going to see by default, it is set usually to debug. If you now change this to release, then what you can do is you can directly build your application as an APK or as a bundle. Okay, it is now changed to this. And you could now do, I think from the top menu, you have to select build. Where do I have to go? I think I first need to kill this, and then you can build bundle or build APKs. Let's say like to build. It's instantly doing this. Isn't there not like a dialogue coming up? Well, yeah, if you do and generate signed bundle, then you go through the process. Okay, so you could now through Android Studio create an APK, create a bundle file in the usual way with the key store files and yada yada yada. I think that procedure, it should be pretty clear for the people who want to use this. Now, a few more things and notes on these process and what we can do as well. So if you don't want to go into these tools, you don't really have to. First of all, what we did in Xcode can be replaced by a command if we use npx expo run iOS. We had that part before, but if you pass in the configuration release, it's doing pretty much the same like changing our scheme. And we could also follow this up with -- device if we now wanted to build this on our device. And cool thing, it's coming up with my devices here. Pretty cool. Same thing is almost true for Android. So for Android, what you could do is npx expo run Android and then using -- variant release. Okay, instead of configuration release on Android, it's usually called a variant. Then you would build your release variant, and this one actually built my release through Android Studio. Pretty nice. So here we go. I do have an app release AAB that I can drag into my my Android device. Okay, so this is the way how we could do the same things that we just did with Xcode and Android Studio straight through the Expo CLI. Finally, I just want to mention that if you like to do this stuff, you could also do something like cd Android and then do Gradle. Let's see. Gradle and then assemble release. I think there's like a command to also get like everything. If I just do Gradle, does it show me like all the possible commands? I don't know if I wanted to do this. I just wanted to get a list of what's possible. I think this was not a good idea. Yeah, well, I just wanted to mention that you could also straight from the command line build your application. So if you use Gradle assemble release, then this is the command to build your Android application straight from the command line. It doesn't really tie too much into React Native and Expo specific stuff. I just want to mention it so you've seen it, that you could do that stuff from the command line as well. So we've now seen Expo Go application, super easy. Expo pre-build, also kind of easy. How to use the native tools, how to use Xcode tools, and how to use Android Studio to build your application. And this means you have like 95% of the knowledge about how to build your React Native application with Expo. And this actually is like enough to build an app, to develop an app, to release an app, and you don't need anything more beyond this. However, let's also talk about EAS. So I think it's quite interesting for you to see that until now I haven't mentioned the word EAS or anything of like paid builds. Everything that you've seen so far in this video is completely free. Using Expo, using the CLI, using Android Studio, using Xcode, and using the available tools to build your app, which just shows you don't have to use EAS, but it can dramatically simplify how you build your React Native application. So EAS Build is a hosted service for building app binaries for your Expo and React Native projects. The first time I got in contact with Expo and looked up how to build stuff, I quickly got into EAS and then local builds of EAS, and everything looked so confusing. So that's why I wanted to show you all the other things of Expo Go and pre-build and what you can do locally before we actually get into this thing, because this might otherwise scare you away and say, oh, Expo is only paid, they wanted me to use EAS. No, you completely don't have to use this if you don't want to, but let's see what we can do. So usually it starts like this. In my application, I would now go ahead and run EAS login, and you have to install the EAS CLI. So yeah, it should be EAS-CLI. So now let me log in here. Logging in also means, of course, that you do need an account, but you can create one for free at expo.dev. Once you are logged in, you can run EAS build configure. So that configures our local project, okay? Would you like to automatically create an EAS project in your account? Yes, I do want this. So this is now creating my app in the dashboard right here. So if I go under projects, what did I call this right now? I think I called this Expo build, right? At least I hope so. Okay, which platform would you like to configure? Let's say all. Alrighty then, your project is ready to build. It generated an EAS JSON. We're gonna have to look at that in a second. And I can now run EAS build when you're ready to create your first build. Alright, let's first of all check out the EAS JSON. So this is a file that just specifies a few things about our project and how Expo can now build our Android and iOS application in the cloud. If you now want to build for iOS, let's talk about this. First of all, there's a block that you can add to your EAS.json. So for Android, this is quite easy. If you want an Android emulator build, for iOS, we need this little block usually. So let's put this right here. Okay, so this is now a development simulator build using the development client. Once again, what we installed in the beginning, you should now understand what development client means. I want to distribute this internally, and for iOS, I want to use the simulator. So at this time, I want to create my cloud build, and I could now run the following command. Okay, EAS build -- profile, the profile we just added. Go away. Go away. So development simulator is the name right here of my profile, and then platform iOS is the platform iOS. All right, I can hit enter, and what happens next is that this would be built in the cloud on the Expo servers. And because I'm on a free plan, I usually get like in a lower tier. I do have some free builds per month that I can use. But usually if you're an agency, a company that's serious about that stuff, you would usually upgrade your account so you're in a higher tier of that queue. If I check out Expo build here, what is this? You didn't like my command? What's your problem? EAS build, yeah, whatever. Okay, so it's uploading my stuff to EAS. Build details are here. I want to open that page. Let's take a look. And you can now observe what is going on. It's creating a new worker instance. We do have the iOS simulator build up here. You can also get notified once this is finished and the status is built in progress. So we're just gonna leave this in the background because this might take some time. In the meantime, I think we can close this. So yeah, you can press exit. You don't have to worry about this. You can continue with your work, get a coffee, whatever, because this is now running in the cloud. However, if you now want to add your devices, you also have to run some commands to run EAS device create. Should I do this? Maybe we're gonna do this. EAS device create. So I can now, yes, I want that account. And then I want to log into my team, and I want, let's say I want a website. This is quite interesting because on iOS, it's quite hard to like publish your application for testing to other people. You usually need profiles and certificates and include devices and their UUIDs in those profiles. So in order to make this easier, there are different ways to set this up. Allows you to manually input IDs. You can have like import stuff from the developer portal, or what I really like is a website. So I could now go to this website right here, and I could just scan this and it would easily install. So installing the provisioning profile would work just by scanning this code with my device. So this is pretty cool in a nice way. Once again, a simplification from Expo to get testing devices into your iOS program. Now, okay, my cloud build is running. We're gonna check it out once it is finished. What we can do as well is use the settings from EAS, but do a local build. The idea here is that if you do a local build with EAS, you can basically test how your app would be built on the Expo EAS servers. On top of that, I mean, it builds your application, you get a nice output of that. So it is a bit easier if you're like limited, if you have a free account, then you can still do this locally. Again, coming back to what I said earlier, if you want to build for iOS, you need a Mac. You can't do an EAS local build for iOS on Windows. So what I would do is now pretty much the same like before, EAS build -- profile. I will just use development for now, development, and then I would say p iOS and follow this up with -- local. All right. And now what we witness is the exact same build of my application, my React Native application, but locally, okay? So here, my build is running in the cloud. I don't know what's going on. It's still spinning up the development environment. Nah, it's almost finished. Oh, nice. We're already installing the pods. I'm on a high priority queue today. And this, what's going on here, is exactly the same thing. So yeah, select devices. I've included all the devices. Would you like to set up push notifications? No, don't want this again. So after a lot of questions, it will finally build my application, and then it will do the same stuff as I said that's doing here. It's using Fastlane in the background. You can also configure your own Fastlane stuff, but why would you do this if you could just use EAS or other tools? So this is Expo EAS explained for iOS. As you've seen, we can do it locally, we just need to configure the project ones, or we can build in the cloud, which of course gives you access to a lot more things. You can connect your accounts, your App Store Connect account to EAS, which means the build is in the cloud, it will get submitted to App Store Connect, and it's just a lot easier to make new releases of your application. So for everyone who's doing frequent updates, for every company that's doing frequent updates to the React Native application, EAS is highly recommended. And I've talked to many companies and they all just love it. Just look at the statistics in the State of React Native survey. Okay, would be pretty cool if this would be finished. It's already running Fastlane, so maybe let's wait a second until this is done. Alright, in the meantime, a few things happened. So locally, I ran the command to build an iOS application with EAS. It generated an IPA file, as you can see, but it put it into the Android folder. I'm not entirely sure what went wrong right here, because this file here should be at the top level. It's because I'm in the Android folder. I ran the command from the Android folder. Okay, so my bad. Usually this file happens right here, and then you have your IPA file that you can deploy to an iOS device if you want to share it like this. Okay, this is my local EAS build. At the same time, I also ran the cloud build. For whatever reason, that failed, and it failed at an upload task to Google API. So I definitely didn't want to upload my archive in the first place, so I don't know why this failed. Anyway, I'm going to show you something that succeeded in a second. Also, in the meantime, what I did is Sneaky Simon ran the same command for Android. So we do see, if I go to development builds of my project, I have an Android internal build as well going on. It's currently building, it's running Gradle, prepared the credentials. So probably in a minute, we should see my APK file that I could download here as well. However, I did this upfront to test things, and of course, here in this showcase, I have this finished. So if you successfully do these things, you can usually see something like this. You get a download here. I can download. This would give me a tar file. And of course, the same here for Android. I could install this just with a QR code, with a link, really doing a lot of easy stuff. However, both also have this button to open with Orbit. So if you're interested in Expo Orbit, you can read about this right here. It's a cool extension that you can install for Mac and Windows, and then you can like directly run a build on your device. If I now click Expo Orbit here, you don't see it. I can select a build from EAS, but it's kind of boring. So just check this out yourself. But with Orbit, you could now directly deploy this EAS build to your simulator, to your devices, and it makes things once again a bit easier. So regarding EAS, You need to configure your project with EAS, then you need to sometimes create devices and upload credentials, and then you can build your project either locally with EAS or as it is intended in the cloud. If you do a cloud build, you can do, of course, both iOS and Android. You can't do a local iOS build on Windows. And you can finally use these archives to directly connect them to App Store Connect and Google Play Store and submit them and easily build out these pipelines or do the builds locally. And with Expo Orbit, you can just easily install that stuff later. Okay, that's almost everything I wanted to show you. I just want to mention one more thing, and that is the great course from Katie Kremen here on Egghead. I usually don't promote Egghead because on Galaxies you have basically all the courses that you need, but this one is free and it's really a great resource. If you're interested in more build and deploy React Native apps with Expo EAS, she covers everything of that process as well in this course, so you can check this one out. We do have another course on building and publishing your app on Galaxies as well, so for all Galaxies Pro members, you should find a similar resource, and maybe I can also convince Katie to create a course for Galaxies in the future. That is my dream. I really hope this video gave you an overview about how you can build your React Native application with Expo the different ways. We've talked about Expo Go, the easy way, Expo pre-build once you use your own native modules and need more freedom than Expo Go, how you can use and leverage Android Studio and Xcode to build your applications locally, to create archives or even submit your application, and we've covered EAS, which can help you to build things. For example, if you're on Windows and want an iOS build, you can do this with EAS in the cloud, or you can use EAS to easily build up a pipeline of build, commit, release your application to App Store Connect, Play Store, and just have everything covered in one place that works really flawless. You can also do app updates, over-the-air updates. Really, there's a whole lot more to EAS. So let me know if you have more questions about EAS and we can do a specific course or video on just doing EAS, or you check out the resource from Katie. So thanks for watching. Make sure you stay subscribed. Check out galaxies.dev if you want more guidance, more projects, and more video courses on React Native, and also a supportive community. And I will catch you in the next one. So until then, happy coding, Simon.
Sekian video saya menyimak materi React Deploy ini. Saya akhiri. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.